Okay, friends, today we are going to talk about one big lesson from this text. That is, everything I need to know I learned in the forest. The lesson is as big as the title. This is an essay, it's a creative essay from the very well-known writer Vandana Shiva. Vandana Shiva, you might have studied about her, in the note on author, that she was a versatile writer. Initially, she did not want to become a writer. She did not have any idea of writing at all. But once she was involved into conservation of nature and deforestation and biodiversity programs and all those things, she was forced to put her thoughts. She was forced to pen down her thoughts and then leave a message to the youngsters, to the other people in the world. Today, she stands as one of the best writers on biodiversity, as a proprietor of the seed center or the Navadanya, and also as a very motivational speaker on deforestation. Very quickly, we shall go through this lesson. Of course, I have made certain points, and point-wise we'll be discussing this. As it is given in your notes, let us just jot down all the important points about this lesson. So I think that should definitely help us to summarize this lesson in a very neat fashion and also understand it better. Once you put the whole big chapter in the form of 7 points as you have in your study material, 7 points, and those points in it, there are again some notes written on these subheadings. I think that should be enough for us to understand what this chapter tries to say. We shall start with this essay, Everything I Need to Know I Learned in the Forest. Talking slightly about Vandana Shiva, she was mainly an environmentalist. We learned that she was just born and brought up in those small tiny villages of the Dehradun place. Naturally it is a beautiful place. She is mentioned as an environmentalist everywhere. To her credit, to her academic credit, she has these degrees. She has an MSc Honours. I have written it in a different way. HONOURS. MSc in Honours. Topic is Particle Physics from University of Punjab. That is where she initially does her education. Her education starts right away in India. Doing her MSc Honours. Later on, she goes to Canada. She is forced to move to Canada, and in Canada, she finishes her MA in philosophy, and again from there, she again goes back to Ontario, and there she gets her PhD in quantum mechanics. So she has all these things in her credit. These science subjects, the MSc and the PhD in physics and particle physics, that helped her, the science subjects helped her to be more creative in whatever topics that she took about conservation of energy, conservation of soil and nature. She also had this MA in philosophy wherein she tried to talk about nature and man. See, whenever you have to understand about nature, whenever you have to try to understand about the relation between man and nature, I think philosophy has to come into your mind. And later on in the chapter, we also learn that she's spoken lots and lots about Tagore. When she has to talk about Tagore, this MA in philosophy has helped her, has definitely helped her a lot. So quickly moving on to what Vandana Shiva's initial days, her ecological journey is about. This is the first point that we have made note of. Vandana's ecological journey, it all began in her hometown, in a small village where her parents, they reared these children. Vandana Shiva's father, as we have learned, he was a forest conservator. Forest conservator, a person who goes around the forest, sees that everything is intact, a forest officer kind of person, and his job was to see that the trees are not cut off, that's called as a felling of the tree. They are not felled off unnecessarily, and they are very well and neatly maintained. So his job was a conservator's job. Mother, naturally, because she was, it seems, the lesson says, Vandana Shiva's mother She came out from the partition, fleeing from the fear of partition. She comes and settles down in the Garhwal region of the Himalayas, in the Dehradun village, in the Uttarakhand part of it. So probably she was born into that, probably the north and the western part of India. Because of this separation, she feared that, and she came off into this Garhwal region, and she started her job as a farmer. So mother was a farmer, father was a conservator. So the children here, they had lot of nature to learn with. And her close friends were nature. Mother used to sing poems and write stories, everything related to nature. And that is how the strong concept of nature went into her, deep into her minds. So that is how she started her ecological journey. As a child, she would run around in the streams and bathe, and she would happily find these trees, growing trees and planting trees. All that was her daily hobby for her. So she just starts all these things. And then she comes and joins the Chipko movement. Her very way of joining the Chipko movement is very interesting. She had gone out for her further studies, to Punjab. She just goes off leaving her village. And once, during a vacation, she comes back and she sees that the streams that were flooding all the time, they had reduced, to a small strip of water. The big, large streams, they all had, they had lost their weight. They had become size 0. And there is hardly no water at all for her to play with. So she is worried, and she tries to find out the reason. And then she realizes that it is only because of the cutting of the trees. So there's a lot of afforestation happening. There's a lot of felling of the trees happening, because of which, we've learned in our geography and science and all those things that these felling of the trees and soil erosion, they are interconnected. Once there are no trees, no rains, and whatever rain comes, it is all just gone off. All this is your geography and science that you have learned. So she understands that the trees have been cut, and therefore the river also has drained out. It has reduced into a very thin stream, into a thin patch of water. So then she realizes that she has to go and join a movement which was already started, it had already started, it had taken shape, and she wanted to understand more about the Chipko movement. She wanted to join this Chipko movement because she writes there, the women, the peasant women there had realized. So let us understand what this Chipko movement is. Friends, you have in your history, you have learnt about the Chipko movement. Chipko means to go and hug somebody. Hug somebody nahi here, it is just the tree. Go and hug the tree. You have to attach yourself to the tree, and then not allowing the woodcutter or the feller or the person who is ready to cut the tree, not allowing that person to kill the tree at all. Or in other words, you are allowing the person to cut the tree at the risk of your job, at the risk of your life. So you are ready to give up your life for the sake of tree. So that was the movement that was started. This Chipko movement was started under the leadership of, yes, Sundarlal Bahuguna. Sundarlal Bahuguna was the person who started. Under his leadership, there were other women who started actually it was the women who had started. It went on to a national-wide protest under the leadership of Sundarlal Bahuguna. This was a non-violent movement which started in 1970. Non-violent, nobody is going to be killed, nobody is going to fight for the sake of a tree, nothing like that. It was just the hugging of the tree that was done. So it is a non-violent movement, and it was started by you'll have to understand and you'll have to write this, that it was started by the peasant women or the women peasants of the Garhwal Himalayas. So they belong to the Himalayan region, the Garhwal. Garhwal is a region over there in the Himalayas near the Uttarakhand. So near that, the women started this kind of protest because they were the ones who were fetching water for their family. So it is very neatly and logically explained in this part of the lesson. See, the women had to go and bring water. They used to bring 3 things: the fuel, the fodder, and food. Okay, they would bring the fodder, F-O-D-D-E-R. Fodder means the food that you feed your cattle with. So the grass that you give to them. So they had to cut the fodder and bring. They also had to bring the fuel. Fuel is the sticks and all those firewood that they collect from the forest. And they also would bring water from the rivers. So this was the main job for the women of the peasant women. They had to go to the nearby forest to collect the fodder, to collect the fuel, and also to collect the water. They used to bring pots and then they would feed their family with water. Once these streams, they start reducing in size, water becomes less, grass is not grown, trees are cut off and taken away by special people, and there is no firewood. That only meant that these women, they had to move longer distances. So everything that was available for them next door, now they have to move a slightly farther distance to collect the firewood, to collect the water. Again, once that place also becomes vacant, they'll have to move farther. So once they move here, as the conservation, as the deforestation process is decreased and the cutting of the trees is increased, the people, the women, they had to move longer distances. See, every now and then they can't go and come because it only eats their time. So what they would do is go there and carry a heavier weight, bring a lot of weight at once so that they could save time. So they only understood that the cutting of the trees means less fodder, less fuel. That means longer distances to walk. That means heavier load to carry back. That's what I told you. It is logically explained very well. So they thought, see, the forests are cut. That means we need to move farther and get heavier loads. So they understood that, and then they started a revolution called the Chipko movement. They wanted to save the trees. They wanted to protect the trees. They were very fond of trees, That's why they started this. They, according to these women, their real value of forest, it's not just profit, it's not just the timber that is got. The real benefit, the real value of forest was springs and streams. Have you heard this word somewhere? Yes, these are the names of your textbooks. Springs and streams. It's just not profit, but it is the spring that is got from nature. It is the stream that gives us water. It is also, the real value is food for cattle and fuel for hearth. So all these three are the important factors, the value of forest. So to protect the forest, they had this Chipko movement. In 1973, say actually it had started in 1970 and it was taken to a national-wide, nation-wide movement. It was taken to a national level by Sundarlal Bahuguna, and Vandana Shiva also joined this, and she becomes as a volunteer. She joins as a volunteer. She wants to help these peasant women conserve nature. And she does lot of padyatras and lot of documentation. She just, documentation is documenting about the deforestation. How many of them have been cut? How many of them have been preserved? What was the number of trees in the yesteryears? How have, whether it has increased or decreased? All these things are called documenting. She also documents about the people who are cutting off the forest. So all these things are written because she is a learned, educated woman. She tries to write all these things and make a document of. And in 1977, there was a drastic and a dramatic incident that took place. All these things are about Vandana Shiva. She's done all these things and she's become a volunteer. She is moving in. 1977 is also set as a major event in the history of conservation. 1977, one of the leader of this Chipko movement, along with Sundarlal Bahuguna, there was one more lady called Bachni Devi. She was one woman who protested openly in her village of Advani. So Advani village, she protests. The protest has taken so much of name because the protest was against her husband only. Her husband Bachni Devi's husband was amongst those woodcutters, amongst those forest officers who used to cut these plants, cut these trees for the sake of profit, for the sake of money. So she involved, she got in lot of women from her village and she revolted against her own husband. The revolt that they show also is something unusual, that is special. The women, they all gathered and each one of them, they went and they literally hugged the tree. Hugged the tree and they were not ready to leave the tree at any cost. Another speciality of it was they had these lighted lanterns. They had the lanterns, even in broad daylight, they had the lantern and they wanted to show the forest officers who were ready to cut the plants, cut the trees, that these mind, they are dark, they are ignorant. The lighted lantern was a symbolic representation of showing that these people need to be enlightened and they are ignorant about the value of forest. There is a heated argument between the forest officer and Bachni Devi. Forest officer, he calls them as foolish women who know nothing about profit, benefit, business and all those things. Bachni Devi, along with her friends in the village, she also revolts back, she also talks back and she says, we also know what profit means. And for us, trees are just not profit-making objects, but they are life-giving objects. We just can't take and talk about profit all the time. She also, I have just summed up the whole conversation. She says, profit, what are you talking about? The trees do not just give timber, resin and profit. That's not just the profit that you talk of. That's only the materialistic profit that you're talking about. But there are other profits also, like the soil, water and pure air. The Mother Earth has all these things. She has to have soil, she has water in her, and she also has this earth. The forest contains pure air, and all this, it sustains the life. All of them, they hold the life together. So for us, forests are just not profit yielding objects, but they are the heart and soul. They are the breath of our lives. So this one was one part, how it all started. Conservation of forest. For Vandana Shiva, it's just started in this phase. And she was highly inspired by the Chipko movement. The people, the way they were trying to put conserve their forests. So all these things are noted in this paragraph. Next we have monocultures, how Vandana Shiva takes her own steps in conservation of forest. So beyond monocultures is the next title that we'll be talking about. Continuing with Vandana Shiva's essay, we have done the first two points about it. The first 2 points, they talk about Vandana Shiva's ecological journey, how she started her journey. And the second one was about Chipko movement, what Chipko movement is all about, how it was started and how Vandana Shiva got to get into this kind of movement, what motivated her, all those things we have learned about it. So in the next one, her journey continues. We have seen that Vandana Shiva did not want to restrict only into this non-violent movement of called the Chipko movement. She wanted to do something beyond that. She wanted to reach out, her studies, her education, her qualification. She wanted to reach out to the poorest person in the world, in India. She wanted to help them out. She wanted to bring about some changes in the lives of people so that they can think of other things also, how to conserve nature, how to create different kinds of crops and all those things. When there was a lot of crisis, she came as one ray of hope. And that is when she starts this monoculture. Friends, there are so many terms here. Let us understand each one of them one by one. Monoculture means the single method, the single technique of growing something. So here, monoculture, it refers to two things. One is in the crops. Some farmers, they had stuck themselves into a particular crop. So they just wanted to grow the same kind of crop every year. So that is their culture, that is their mindset that they have to be growing only one particular crop. That is monoculture. The second thing is monoculture of our attitude. just get stuck to one particular thing. We feel we are very good in that field. We don't want to move out of that field we are comfortable in. Any risk-taking factors, any challenging things, we don't want to, we dare not do it in life. So monoculture has to be gone off. Now, once you go beyond monoculture, then you become a diversified personality. Once you stick to your own strengths and you are just bound in your own cocoon, so you get this monoculture. You are just there itself, thinking only of your one or two strengths. She here very strongly appeals to the people, asking them to shed off all their covers and then think beyond their abilities. Once you think beyond your abilities, you become a diversified person. Coming back to Vandana Shiva and her monocultures of land and biodiversity, she also thought and she made people to learn, to understand and to think beyond monoculture, beyond the same kind of cultivating, to think beyond that. And then she made people understand that Earth, our ecology, is filled with biodiversity. Living things, living beings. Diversity, variety. Let us not get confused with this word diverse. It is completely opposite, it is irrelevant. In fact, not just opposite, it is irrelevant with the word divorce, divorce that we have. Divorce is what they get, that legal separateness, legal separation that they get. And the husband and the wife, they get a legal separation. That is called a divorce. Here we are talking about diverse, which means variety. So we are talking about variety of living things that are present in our biology, in our ecology. That is biodiversity. Biodiversity and biodiversity-based living economies. Living things that give us a lot of economy, like the fish culturing and the sericulturing and growing of different kinds of cash crops and the food crops. So she made people understand that life, the ecology is filled with lot of biodiversified objects and living creatures. She also taught people that monocultures of mind is something that is the failure to understand that there is something separate, that there is something unique in every one of us. So she strongly taught the people that there is monoculture of the mind, and that is the failure to understand that biodiversity is there in our surrounding. That is monoculture of mind. You just think about only one particular object, one particular crop. You're not ready to go into other fields and venture out new things. So monoculture of mind is nothing but the failure to understand biodiversity, and all this is the root of impoverishment of nature and culture. Impoverish means to degrade, decline. The declination or declining of nature and culture happens only when we have this kind of monoculture in our mind. So she just tries to tell people that we have to be diversified in our thoughts and working styles also. So she, having taught people about this monocultures and beyond monocultures and all, her plan is to start a farm wherein they collected seeds from farmers. They collected variety of seeds from farmers, especially of rice and wheat, and they wanted to experiment on these and understand why there was a lot of variety. There are lots and lots of variety of rice. Why it is like that, and which quality of rice, which type of rice is suitable for which kind of soil. So this kind of experiment had to be done. They wanted their own farm wherein they could conduct experiments and help the farmers to grow better crops. Therefore, they started the Navadanya farm. Now, they had their own farm in the Dehradun Valley, and in the Doon Valley they started the Navadhanya farm and there they started cultivating around 630 species of rice, 150 species of wheat, and 100 variety of other species, other crops. They started experimenting on this, and they helped the farmers to grow the most suitable species in their farm. Along with that, they also started, Vandana Shiva and her team, they all started the organic farming. Now tell me if you don't know about organic farming. Everybody knows about organic farming now. Now, it has become a hot cake. Everybody knows that, everybody practices it, and people are behind this organically grown fruits and vegetables. Organic farming is nothing but less or no use of fertilizers, chemical fertilizers. It is organically grown. So organic farming was started in the year 1987 in Navadhanya farm, wherein they taught the farmers to make use of the organic manure that was prepared in their backyard, from the vegetable peels, from the cow dung, from the dry leaves, from the humus. All these things were taken in, and then the organic farming was done, was taught, and was also passed on from one farmer to the other. So they helped the farmers to grow this organic farm and to grow the crops organically. Following all these methods, they have right now they have around 100 community seed banks, community belonging to one particular group in every area, in every locality, in every village, or the village panchayat limit and all. They have around 100 community banks, and each bank has around 3,000 varieties of rice. That is what is their achievement, big achievement. Something that started way back in 1987 has grown to such extent. Now they are able to tell the farmers that there are around 3,000 varieties of rice, and each farmer is helped to grow any variety of rice that he can grow. This Navadhanya farm, it helps the farmers in the transition from fossil fuel and chemical based monoculture to biodiversity. The main intention of Navadhanya farm is to help the farmers. What the help should these farmers get? It is a transition. Transition means changing over. Transition, change from fossil fuel. I'm sorry, but this chapter talks lots and lots of science and geography that you have already learned. Do you ever remember what fossil fuel is? Yes, fossil fuel is the fuel that is obtained from the crust of the earth, from underneath the earth. Very simple example is our petrol. Petrol and petroleum products. The LPG, the Vaseline, the gasoline that you get, the petroleum jelly that you get, the kerosene and the diesel, all these things, they all come under this fossil fuel. So, farmers, they had clinged to the fossil fuel, fertilizers and chemical-based fertilizers. And so that was their main way of growing crops. And from the Navadhanya farm, from Vandana Shiva's team, the farmers were taught how to change this chemical-based ecology, chemical-based monoculture into biodiversity. So they just were taught how to grow variety of crops. You have heard the word rotation of crops. This was done, rotation was done. The nutrition that was in the soil, that was kept back by this rotation of crops. Crops were grown continuously, variety of crops. All that helped the farmers, and farmers were very happy with the Navadhanya farm, with Vandana Shiva and her Beyond Monoculture theme. So this is about monoculture theme, that wherein we study all these things, her achievement as an environmentalist, her achievement as a conservationist. Next, we have, we go from the Doon Valley to the Himalayan region to throughout India, and now it is beyond India. We're talking about the rights of nature. Vandana Shiva, in her essay, she puts forth all these things, how conservation was taken into an international level and how the other countries are putting on lot of efforts. They are planning to conserve nature. And remember, dear students, this is one thing that you'll have to really understand. Ecuador was the first country to understand that nature also is an individual. Nature also has its own rights. So in fact, in poetic terms, we can say that Ecuador was the first country to personify nature. Okay, and they thought that nature is one person who also has to have its own rights. It has to be protected. Its rights have to be protected. So nature is a teacher. According to every one of us, it's the best teacher. And everybody can learn any kind of lesson from nature. And Ecuador, it understood that the rights of nature has to be protected. Therefore, Ecuador country, they recognize the rights of nature in its constitution. See, time and again, amendment of constitutions happen. Amendment means changing or addition or deletion of some acts and laws and rules in the constitution. It has to happen. Amendments are very essential. You can't stick to the same rules and regulations that were made 100 years ago. Now, country is progressing. The world is progressing. So, we need to make some changes. According to the law, you just can't stick back. You'll become an ancient country then. So, you'll have to keep changing. Ecuador also, when it was amending its constitution, it changed and included the rights of nature in its constitution. And remember, again I'm telling you, this is the first country to do it, and it set an example. So following Ecuador, it was Bolivia which followed. Again, it thought on the similar lines, and it also put in rights of nature in its constitution. So according to law, the nature has to be protected. Nature and its rights have to be protected. Anybody violating this rule, they will be subjected to the court. They will be punished. It is an offense. So Bolivia and Ecuador, they were the two countries who put the rights of nature in their constitution. This was another example set by these two countries. And looking at these two countries, the UN itself, it started making several changes. Till then, people, even in the UN, they were not aware that nature could be considered this way. So after these two countries made their changes, UN also made some changes in its mannerisms, in its thoughts, laws and all. And in the year 2011, the UN General Assembly, it organized Earth Day celebrations. So till then, it was just considered as nature. It was thought that nature is separate, man is separate. But after these two countries made changes, UN said yes. The nature has to be, its birthday has to be celebrated. So every year we celebrate nature's birthday. Any guesses? Which day is it? I'll not take much time. If we could answer, I definitely would have got all 364 days except the real one. 364 days as the nature's birthday. If you don't know also, just remember this thing. It is on April 22nd that we celebrate as the Earth Day. Okay, April 22nd of every year is celebrated as the Earth Day. It is not Environment Day. It is not at all June 5th that we celebrate. June 5th is different, and April 22nd is different. So Earth Day celebration was done, and on Earth Day celebrations, along with UN, different countries, they have meetings, and they have kind of projects, they have kind of thoughts and seminars to improve the rights of nature. They just wanted to improvise all these things. After this, we have the UN Secretary General's report called The Harmony with Nature. And here he says that destructive nature of man is the result of failure to recognize that humans are inseparable from nature. This appears to be a very long sentence, very complex sentence, but it's very easy to understand. Destructive nature of man. Man is born to destroy everything. I remember there is a saying which says, whenever man walks, the path that he walks, even a grass is not grown. So he is such venomous creature. Not even a grass grows where man moves. That's not the same thing in jungle. Wherever tiger moves, it doesn't. It's not that it has made its own path. So they don't have their paths at all. Man's nature is destruction. And this destructive nature of man, destruction of what? Destruction of nature. For what sake? For his own selfish motto. For timber, for fuel, for furniture, for food, and for making money. All these things. See, this nature of man, it is just the result. It's the answer. It is the only result because man has failed to understand and recognize. It is the result of failure of human beings to recognize that humans are separable from nature. Man is inseparable from nature. Man and nature cannot be separated. That if he understands, this thing is definitely correct. So he tries to say this in his report, that man and nature are inseparable. Okay, the UN Secretary General's report, it said that man and nature are inseparable. Supporting that, and there is a new term that is coined by Cormac Cullinan. He gave us a new idea, he gave us a new word called the eco-apartheid. Students, you are aware that apartheid means separateness. Separateness because of the color of the skin, racism. Because of this, human beings were separated. But here, Cormac Cullinan, he says that man also, he is developing this kind of separatedness from nature. He has an illusion in him. Illusion is a blind belief. A belief in him that he is separate from the nature. He and nature, they are not one identity at all. It is okay even if man cannot live without nature, which is his belief, and that is completely wrong nowadays. So Cormac Cullinan says that there is something called eco-apartheid that is being followed nowadays. See, we have left behind that apartheid. That is dead and gone long back, centuries ago, years ago. But now there is one thing called as the eco-apartheid. This means that man has got this belief that he does not require nature for his survival, to live harmoniously, to live happily. He doesn't require nature at all. That is the illusion that he's got. That is the belief that he has got. So Cormac Cullinan, he talks about eco-apartheid, and this eco-apartheid is highly destructive. Fine, what to do next? This is all that, the rights of nature that has been given. So the people from other countries, other nations, they have spoken about man, his destructive nature, and how to come out of all these things. So now again they talk about, they give, in the next topic, they talk about what are the different ways in which this eco-apartheid can be completely eradicated, completely taken off. So he just will learn in the next units how to come out of this eco-apartheid, how to be united with nature, and how our historians and poets have told about this kind of unity with nature. Okay, we'll do it in the next point.